ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. I would like to delve today on two personalities that appear in the Bible. They are brothers. Yehuda, he is the fourth son of Yaakov and Leah, and Yosef. Yosef is the first son of Yaakov and Rachel. We all know, I think, the story of how Joseph, is sold into slavery by his brothers. And in Egypt, he attains certain position in a guy by the name of Potiphar in his house. And this Potiphar has a wife who falls in love with Yosef, and Yosef goes to jail because of it. Eventually, he comes out of jail, he interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and he becomes second to Pharaoh himself. And after many years of separation from his brothers who sold him into slavery, he's now second in command in Egypt. Now the brothers have to come and buy food from Egypt because there is lack of food all over, not only in Egypt. The 7 cows that were fat and the 7 lean cows, that was a dream for Pharaoh, but it affected really the entire region. So Yaakov sends his sons to buy provisions in Egypt, and somehow the story goes that Yosef insists that next time they come, they must bring their brother Benjamin, and they do it. Benjamin somehow is accused of robbery because they place Yosef's cup. Apparently, they used to use a cup for some magical incantations. In those days, in his things, Benjamin is put in jail. Okay, this is the story. We are here right now. Benjamin is in prison, and the brothers don't know what to do. They can't face the father without Benjamin, because Benjamin is the brother of Yosef. What are they going to do? So Judah is the one that is going to speak to Yosef and argue that he should let his brother go. I want to tell you something about the personality of Yosef. Take a look at this Yosef. Yosef was an enchanting boy. He was good looking. He worried, for instance, about his brothers who were sons of the concubines. He took their part. He was close to the father. The father gave him a special garment because he was so close. He loved his brothers. Things were done to him that really, in the end, they really had no right to do what they did to him. He had dreams. Come on, that's not the same as doing something concrete against somebody else. So Yosef is really perfect. You know, he comes before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is about to tell him his dreams. He says, just a moment, Pharaoh, I am not an interpreter of dreams. What God will tell me, that's what I'm going to do. Joseph is a perfect guy. A beautiful woman wants to make love to him. She's the boss's wife. He could have said, well, no, he does not succumb. Joseph has certain principles, moral principles. He's not going to fall. Joseph is the perfect human being. He's perfect in everything. As a matter of fact, I think he's the only one outside of the Bible that our rabbis refer to, Yosef HaTzadik. He's entirely just. But there's a problem with these people who are entirely just. Sometimes when a problem comes, they don't know how to react. Shaul was a great man, handsome man. Nobody reached him to his shoulder. He towered above everybody, perfect in everything, a great warrior and so on. But then he made a mistake. He didn't obey the word of God. And from that day on came the downfall of Saul. You know, when you take a perfect surface and you do a little scratch, that scratch is already very visible. When there's something that has a number of scratches, maybe you don't pay that much attention to the scratches. But in the case of Saul, he no longer could recuperate from that and kept on making mistakes. King David, is a descendant of Judah. Judah wasn't a perfect individual. The Torah tells us the following, that the brothers actually told Judah. Judah is the one that told him to sell him as a slave and not to kill him. They shouldn't have blood on their hands. They argued afterwards, why didn't you tell us to set him free? You see, we listened to you when you told us to sell him as a slave. Had you told us to set him free, maybe we would have sold him. Maybe we would not have sold him as a slave. He would have been free. Well, he's not a perfect individual. The Torah says that there's an intermission. He goes and marries a woman. She doesn't even have a name. She's the daughter of Shua, Bat Shua. She's the daughter of Shua, a Canaanite. And he has 3 sons with her. The oldest marries a woman by the name of Tamar. The oldest dies for some reason. The second one marries because of levirate, it's called. He's supposed to marry the woman in order to give a name to his deceased brother, since he knows that the child won't be named after him, it'll be like the brother. He interrupts the sexual relation with Tamar. He dies also. And Tamar sees that the third one is not given to her as a husband. In the meantime, the wife of this Judah, Yehudah, the daughter of Shua, dies also. So he is in mourning. Tamar decides to disguise herself as a prostitute. And Judah, who no longer has a wife, solicits her favors, and she becomes pregnant. That's terrible. She became pregnant. She should have never had relations with anybody else. She was a widow that had to be waiting for the third son. In any event, there is a case, a criminal case. She's brought before justice, and she says, you know who's the father of that child that I have? The owner of these garments, of this stick. This is the father of the child. And those were things that belonged to Judah. Judah could have, kept quiet, but no. Judah assumed responsibilities. But you see also that he is a faulty personality. He's not 100%. He had relations with a prostitute. That is not really for one of the main biblical characters who's going to be the father of a tribe. Judah is not perfect, but Judah is Judah nevertheless. In other words, in adversity, he says he assumes responsibility. His brothers, he feels that he saved Joseph from real death. He is firm in his convictions also. And he comes before Joseph and he says to him, you can't do this. And eventually the brothers embrace themselves. And we have 2 different personalities. Joseph, who is perfect. But then again, those who are perfect, when comes a certain problem, suddenly they lose everything, because they only know perfection in this world. And those that know the difference, there are good things that you do, there are mistakes that you make, and you learn from your mistakes, you grow, you continue ahead. You don't permit that circumstances should stop you from progressing also. I think most of us are really like Judah. We're not like Joseph. Do you know anybody who has never committed a mistake, who made a mistake in his life? There are some people who are perfectionists, close to it. In any little thing that interrupts their manner of living, immediately they're totally disoriented. But most of us, I think, know what achievements are, what failures are. But the important thing is to assume responsibility, like Judah did. The most important thing is, don't permit that a failure should already ensure your future development. There was another king. His name was David. David committed errors. He was no saint in some respects. Some people will think that David was totally perfect, but it wasn't so. The prophet Nathan accused him of incorrect behavior that he had, but he was also, when he was suffering, when he had remorse, he was also the composer of psalms that we recite to this very day. He had a noble spirit within. David learned from his mistakes and grew because of them. And those who think they're perfect, somehow, in any moment of a contrary wind, they simply disappear. So, but most of us, I think, are like Judah, are like David. We're not their statue, but we have our good qualities, we have our problems. Let us make sure that we don't fall apart. If you make a mistake, go back a little bit and go ahead again. I am sure that each mistake is also an opportunity of learning, of growing to become a better human being.